The 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is almost here, and early forecasts suggest another potentially active year across the Atlantic basin. How many storms could form? Which areas may face the greatest risk? And what role could ocean temperatures and climate patterns play this season? In today's video, we'll break down the latest outlooks, explain what experts are watching, and discuss what it could mean for communities from the Caribbean to the Gulf Coast and the eastern United States. The Atlantic hurricane season officially runs from June 1st through November 30th, with peak activity usually occurring between August and October. During this time, warm ocean waters provide energy for tropical systems to develop. Some storms remain weak and short-lived, while others can grow into powerful hurricanes capable of producing damaging winds, flooding rains, and life-threatening storm surge. But the big question this year is what kind of season we're actually expecting. According to the latest outlook from NOAA, the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is forecast to be below average overall. That means fewer storms than usual, but it does not mean a low-risk season. Forecasters are currently calling for around 8 to 14 named storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and possibly 1 to 3 major hurricanes reaching Category 3 strength or higher. So why a quieter forecast this year? The main driver is a developing El Niño pattern in the Pacific Ocean. When El Niño is present, it changes global wind patterns high in the atmosphere. In the Atlantic, that often leads to stronger wind shear, which can tear apart developing storms and make it harder for hurricanes to organize. But there's another side to the story. Even with a quieter setup overall, the Atlantic Ocean is still very warm, and warm water is fuel for hurricanes. So while fewer storms may form, the ones that do develop can still become powerful very quickly. And that's something experts keep stressing. It only takes one storm making landfall to define the entire season. Now let's talk about where the risk is highest this year. Even in below-average seasons, the greatest threats usually focus on the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and the southeastern United States, including the Gulf Coast and parts of the Atlantic coast. These areas are especially vulnerable because storms forming closer to land, sometimes called homegrown systems, can develop quickly and leave less time for preparation. Now let's talk about rapid intensification. Some storms can jump from weak to major hurricanes in just 24 hours, potentially 48 hours. This happens especially if it's in a really favorable environment. Warm water in the Gulf and Caribbean make this more likely though, so hurricane forecasts can actually change very quickly. And one of the biggest dangers isn't just the storms forming, it's how fast they can explode into strength. Now you guys might want to know how hurricanes actually form. Hurricanes begin as clusters of thunderstorms over warm ocean water. When the ocean surface is warm enough, usually around 80 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, it acts like fuel for the storm. Warm water causes more evaporation, which feeds moisture into the atmosphere. That rising warm air begins to spin due to Earth's rotation, slowly organizing into a tropical system. But not every disturbance becomes a hurricane. Some fall apart almost immediately, while others grow into powerful, organized systems that can last for days or even weeks. Even when conditions are favorable, there are forces that can weaken storms. One of the biggest is wind shear. Wind shear is a change in wind speed or direction with height in the atmosphere. When wind shear is strong, it can tear apart a developing hurricane, preventing it from organizing. Another factor is dry air. Dry air acts like a barrier that disrupts thunderstorm formation inside a storm system. And then there's Saharan dust, which moves off Africa and can suppress storm development across the Atlantic. Even though NOAA is forecasting a potentially quieter season overall, there's still one major concern: ocean temperatures. The Atlantic Ocean remains unusually warm in many areas. And that matters because even if fewer storms form, the ones that do and can intensify very quickly when they pass over warm water. This is where forecasts become less certain. A season can look calm on paper until one storm changes everything, like we said earlier. Even seasons that were considered quiet on paper still produce damaging storms. For example, there's Hurricane Andrew, which happened during a quieter season, and it was a catastrophic hurricane. That's why it is still vital for you to be prepared. Now here is the Atlantic hurricane season names of 2026. So you can see here the first hurricane season name will be Arthur, then it goes to Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Lee, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Ren, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. Some of these are from the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. NOAA uses these names to help track hurricanes. As we wrap up this 2026 Atlantic hurricane season forecast, one thing remains certain. No matter what the numbers say, it only takes one storm to make the season memorable. Forecasts can provide valuable insight into what conditions may favor tropical development over the coming months, but they cannot predict exactly where storms will form or where they will go. Whether the season ultimately becomes more active, less active, or near average, preparation should always remain the top priority. Now is the time to review your hurricane plans, check emergency supplies, and make sure you know what actions to take if watches or warnings are issued for your area. Waiting until a storm is already approaching can leave a little time to prepare, especially if conditions begin to deteriorate quickly. For those living along the Gulf Coast, the East Coast, the Caribbean, and other hurricane-prone regions, staying informed throughout the season is essential. Tropical systems can develop rapidly, and forecasts can change significantly over the course of just a few days. Remember that impacts from tropical cyclones extend far beyond the coastline. Inland flooding, tornadoes, damaging winds, and prolonged power outages can affect communities hundreds of miles from where a storm makes landfall. Every year, we see examples of storms that remind us why preparation and awareness is so important. Throughout the 2026 season, we'll be monitoring tropical waves emerging from Africa, to disturbances in the Caribbean Sea, and activity across Gulf of Mexico, and any systems that show signs of development across the Atlantic basin. We'll also be keeping a close eye on changing ocean temperatures, atmospheric patterns, and other environmental factors that can influence storm formation and intensification. As always, it's important to rely on trusted sources for weather information. Official forecasts and warnings from meteorological agencies should be your primary source when tropical threats arise. Social media can be useful for updates. As June begins and the season officially gets underway, we'll be watching closely for the first signs of activity. Thank you for watching this 2026 hurricane season forecast. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss future tropical updates, forecast discussion, severe weather coverage, and breaking developments throughout the season. Stay weather aware, stay prepared, and most importantly, stay safe.